Today we're going to have Caleb Salt talking about mentoring. But first, do we have any community announcements? Any events coming up? How did, was it Gig City Elixir? How did it go?
Big City Elixir was fun, and the Elixir Bridge went well. But I'm Anna Sherman. I work at Carbon 5, and we have hack nights every other Wednesday, and the next one is going to be next Wednesday at 6 o'clock on this floor somewhere. You'll find us. It gets shifted around. And then the week after that on Wednesday is Cha.js, which I think is like the 14th of November. React Native, at Cha.js. So come join.
Do we have any more? We have a Python meetup November 19th back in the back room, the back room back here. DevOps Days is coming up November 13th, so be sure to check that out. I have one question. How many people participated in the Hacktoberfest this month? Yeah? Awesome. I see a Hacktoberfest shirt. You already got yours. I haven't gotten mine yet. I'm jealous. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Caleb.
Okay. If we get a couple minutes in and I freeze and like stop moving and then die, you could have stayed alive if you had volunteered to speak. So if you're thinking about giving a presentation, remember, you could save lives. All right. Do I need to push a button? That's all right. They're going to push the button. All right. So you want someone else to learn the code. Over the last couple of years, I've had a lot of opportunities to mentor either kids or teenagers or be a trainer at work with new hires. And it's a fascinating experience because I'm not a developer by trade. My degree is in political science. And we'll talk about why it's in political science and not computer science, even though I really wanted to be in computer science when I started. So we'll get into that. But first, picture of these cool kids, because they're awesome, right? They're my kids, I love them, and they've made this topic really personal over the last couple of years. They've become really interested in computers, and they want to learn, what does daddy do? He sits at a computer all day. Let's do that too. And it's interesting because the current generations, and I'm sure there's a couple generations already before my kids, but it's new where they are growing up in a world where the expectation is computers are everywhere. They grow up learning, living on computers and interacting with them, and now they want to control them and do their own little things. And it's fascinating, right? Because programmers, right now, we're building a new world. And it doesn't seem like it, like, I just sit at a little desk, I'm a little desk jockey and whatnot. But you are part of a fundamental shift in the way the world works, which is fascinating. The systems that govern us, the systems that govern our relationships, the way we're educated, the way we're formed, that's all programmers, right? Yeah, I wonder a lot, so the camera may be going crazy. So programmers are a really important part of the world these days, and more people want to be part of this. They either see, they make a lot of money, right? And then you realize you really don't. Some do, right? But like any field. Or it's just fascinating, or it's the ultimate Lego kit, $200 at Walmart, an internet connection, you can do anything you want. It's really cool. And that's what kids are doing these days. So this is Barnes & Noble's. What are kids doing now? And they have board books for infants where they're learning the colors, and it's HTML web colors, right? Or C++ for children, right? Kids these days, at very young age, are being given these opportunities. And we're going to see more and more people coming into this field. If you want to raise your hand, who here is like a new developer? Like, this is like, I just started doing this, right? So one-ish, right? Otherwise, a lot of somewhat seasoned developers, right? And these are things that we've experienced. We're going to more and more have the opportunity to reach out to people in the community around us and help them come into this field, which I think a lot of us are very passionate about. We love doing this. And we have an opportunity to bring people into that, right? So Jessica McCullough stated, learning how to program changes the way you think about, debug, and interact with the world, right? It fundamentally shifts the way you view reality, right? Because you learn a set of rules to build software, then you learn you can change the rules. Programmers master a system that they know they can change, right? And so we take for granted that changing something to make it better is just a thing you do when you need to do it. This can and should carry over into the rest of your life. And I think more and more, and I see this with my kids so often, where they interact with something and their expectation is, I can manipulate it, I can shift it, I can change it, when it comes with the computer technology they use. And then you go to, you know, Chick-fil-A or wherever you want to eat, and they look at the menu and they're like, why can't I modify this? I want a Frosty, right? They're used to the concept, they can manipulate the world. And it's a fundamental shift in the way I think that the rising generations view reality interactions. And as a mentor, you have an opportunity to help shape that. So as talking about mentoring, there's going to be a lot of, I don't have a lot of good answers, so I'm going to ask a lot more questions and address some of the common pitfalls. So as we change topics, we're going to have these Abenai signs, these caution warnings. So this is a road crossing sign in front of a junior high school in Osaka, where we're basically yelling, watch out for the car, right? So those are going to be our transitions. So some of the things I found while mentoring, and it doesn't matter if it's brand new kids, teenagers, college students, new hires, as programmers, as in any specialized field, we have a very technical, specialized vocabulary, right? Words like Boolean and cryptography, brute force, big O, right? And these words just go on and on and on. And we could fill this screen up so it's black. And I think a lot of these words, people actually understand the concepts behind them, but we need to learn how to talk to people in the language that they can follow and understand. This has been one of the biggest problems I've run into trying to mentor, is I just throw out, oh, you need an integer here, right? And they're like, oh, who do you want to use? Right? No, you need an int. And they're like, okay, an int. Okay, so he's from Missouri, maybe he's a hick, and he's talking about little crawly bugs, right? An ant. I'm like, no, an int. He's like, he's a nerd, right? I don't see any tree folk running around, right? Tolkien jokes, right? But talking about programming and technology in a language that people can understand, it can be a hard thing for us because it's a vocabulary that we've been immersed in, and we're used to using just these little offhand phrases that perhaps people just don't understand or know it, right? They may understand the entire concept behind it. So you say an algorithm. I talked to my mom about algorithms, and she's like, a what? Well, an algorithm. And she's like, well, technically I kind of have a grasp of what the dictionary definition for an algorithm might be, but I don't really understand it. Like, well, you're a very good baker. You love cooking. You have a ton of recipes. That's an algorithm of how to do stuff. And boom, she got the concept right there. And then I could use algorithm from then on because we were now speaking the same thing. With kids, this is a fascinating thing because, you know, their vocabulary, my oldest is 7. And his vocabulary, I mean, I think he's got a great vocabulary, but he's 7, right? He talks about stuff on that level. Or even college kids. We just recently had an intern for the summer. He's a CS major, and he knows a lot about computers and stuff. But still, we throw words around the office that he's like, what was that again? I'm not quite sure I follow that. And you explain the concept, and it's just an everyday thing. I heard one CS professor once say that we like to use big words to justify our big salaries. If you make it seem like it's hard and difficult, then you can charge a lot for it, right? Vocabulary is so important, and that's why I put this as the first concept. Learning to talk to people in the language that they understand, because it's more important for them to grasp it than it is for you. And eventually, as they become familiar with this language, we can communicate large amounts of information very quickly by having these specialized words. But that's a real sticking point that is hard to overcome sometimes because you aren't aware of it yourself because it's your native language, these big, complex tech words. So once we can talk about code, and we're talking about it, obviously people want to go out and start writing code, right? And it's maybe a little small, but the picture is more important than the words on it, right? Technically, to write code, you just need some way to type, right? So a basic text editor works perfectly fine. You could write Facebook in Notepad. I would not recommend it, but you could, right? And so they fire up a text editor, they type some things in, and they're great, and they ask you to hey, could you review my program with me? And you look at it and you're like, I could. But there's a couple things that can make this a much more pleasant experience. One of the biggest changes, particularly for people new to programming, and you coming in as a mentor, if you can get this one change when you're helping them out, line numbers. These little tiny things, there's more to point out, these little tiny details can make a huge change in your ability to help someone. Because if I look at this with a brand new person, and this is an example from a teenager I was mentoring, I'm like, oh, your int perimeter is not indented the same. And he's like, the what? Because to him, every line is of equal weight. And to me, I go, int's a keyword, that's what I'm going to trigger on. And the perimeter is a variable, so it's not that big. It's just giving context to which int I'm talking about. And so, again, specialized vocabulary. But if I can say, line 7, where it says int, your integer declaration, notice how it's not lined up. Maybe we can format it so it's a little more clear to read. Instantly, he knows exactly what line I'm talking to, and he can zone in on that. And then the rest of my words are now in a context that is familiar and understandable, and that builds up that vocabulary even more. So line numbers, just a simple thing as that, can make a big difference. And then you can do all sorts of cool things after that, right? Now you have syntax highlighting, a dark theme, menu browsing and stuff. Just these little things, these tools that we take for granted are not familiar to a lot of people, particularly when they come to programming, right? Where we like having line numbers sometimes so we can point to stuff really quick. We like specific formatting. C++, it doesn't really care how it's formatted. But those little things can make it readable. Syntax highlighting, I misdeclared this because it's not the right color or whatnot. These little triggers, maybe as a professional developer, you don't like them. I have a very monochrome color theme in my development. I like it. But when I was a new developer, mine looked like a little rainbow, right? Someone took a bag of Skittles and then blew up on the screen. But these things can help quite a bit when you're first starting out. Now, of course, we can go overboard because if the first thing you do is you show them, say, here you go, let's start programming, right? This is where people start looking at it and going like, oh my goodness, I can't do this. This is too complex. Now, an experienced developer, you look at it and you go like, all right, I know that this pane right here is the one that I need to be focusing on, and the rest of it is just stuff, tools that I'll get to when I want to. Again, it comes to, where's the context? Have they built up context to know which part of this screen is important for them to look at? Now, a lot of tools, I mean, those are great and useful, but then you run into problems like this. Hey, don't use this button. I don't know. It looks like a play button. I'm trying to run my code. I'm going to push it. Well, maybe not with these plugins, right? Little gotchas. A lot of people like these full-blown IDs because they give us a lot of power, right? Smart code linting, unified debugger, intelligent sense, debugging, all these things. Do you know the person you're mentoring? And this is probably going to be like, if there's one thing I can say, like as the take-home lesson, is do you know the person that you're trying to mentor? Mentoring is a relationship thing, much more so than it is a technical thing, right? You need to know technical stuff to pass it on. You need to have a certain level, right? It's hard to lift someone up to a level higher than you are, but it is a personal relationship with them. It's a commitment to, I am here for you, and I need to know you. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Can you handle complexity at this level? Or do we need to go back to the plain text editor with no color theme and just line numbers? You need to know the person you're mentoring and get to know them on a personal level. So tools are an important part of helping as you mentor. This is one of the other areas that I've really struggled with, trying to find a good balance. Where do I draw a line? What tools do I want to use? Do we use an IDE? Do we do an editor? What do we touch? And there's a lot of benefits from a lot of them, right? Syntax highlighting, auto indent, autocomplete, debugging, linting, code execution, just all these little things. I worked on a PHP project once where we were using Sublime tags, and I put a bunch of plugins and snippets and stuff. We did this project. It was like, yeah, this is awesome. We're done. And then a month later, I was on a different computer, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to rock out some PHP. And I realized I had never, ever learned PHP. I had learned Sublime Text plugins and code snippets that wrote the code for you. I had not the slightest idea of how to make a database connection because you just type db tab tab enter, and then like 50 lines of codes popped up, which I didn't know what they were, right? But it worked, right? So cautionary thing, they're great tools. When you're teaching someone, sometimes it's great to just type the whole thing out. Maybe once you understand the code, and once you understand, the person you're mentoring understands the code, start throwing all these tools in that, shortcut stuff for you. But that was another thing that I learned. And of course, we all know, Vim or you're wrong. That's the one true editor. And now the problem with Vim is while it is the one true editor, the learning curve is not really a curve, it's a brick wall, right? This is how you learn Vim. Right? And eventually you knock some of the walls out and then you can edit it. And there's a whole bunch of stuff on Facebook and Reddit about, I rebooted my computer because I was in Vim and I had no idea how to get out. Or like, Vim's been my editor for 20 years because I can't quit it. It's calling Q, but all right. So tools, vocabulary, those things are great. And then what language are you going to use? All right, if you're in a work setting, right, we just have some new interns, like you have to learn our language, right, because that's what we use here. I'm going to teach you that. But you take a new person who's just starting out, and you say, what language am I going to teach you, right? Java, a lot of Java is great. Maybe you want to go into corporate. I worked for the last 14 years in Des Moines, a lot of insurance, a lot of Java. And when you're first starting, you just say, like, this is hand-wavy stuff. What you need to know is this right here, right, to do a hello world. Because I'm not going to teach you what public, static, void, main, string, arg, system out, print line mean yet, because that's not going to mean anything to you. Whereas Python 2, you can just say, print hello world, yay, right? But what do they want to do? What are their interests? What are their hobbies? Like, what are they trying to achieve, right? If they're trying to get a job, where their company's using the heavy Java, maybe you should teach them Java, not AppleScript, right? Even if you love AppleScript, teach them what they know. Also, it's really hard to teach stuff you don't know. I can't teach you Go. I know nothing about Go. This is the most Go I've ever written in my life. And that was copying it from the Wikipedia page. So language can be a huge thing. What level of complexity are you trying to solve? What level of complexity do they want to deal with? What are their goals? They want to be a AAA game studio and they want to make the next, what are popular games nowadays? There's like Fortnite or Fallout or something, I don't know. Whatever those are written in, right, probably has something to do with C, C++. Maybe you need to go that route, right? They want to go into animation, Maya animation and whatnot. Python's a great language because it's all scripted in that. They want to make GIMP plugins, image manipulation plugins. Those are Python plugins, right? So what are their interests? My sister is a graphic artist. She doesn't want to learn programming, but I taught her some Python so she can make, tweak the plugins for her image manipulation programs. Language can make a huge effect on whether someone wants to stay with it. My first language was Turbo Pascal, followed by 8 and 95, and then C++. And 8 and 95 almost made me quit programming, right? But NASA loves it back in the day. Because if it compiles, it's right. So now they've got their first program, they've written it, and this is awesome, right? Non-trivial, this is more than the hello world. It has input, has output, it's got some calculations. Great, and then they run it, and it worked, right? Have you seen that look on someone's face when they tried something that they thought was really hard, and they really put some effort into it, and they've hacked out this little program, and then they run it, and it showed up and did what they thought it would do, and they are so excited. It's thrilling, absolutely thrilling, right? Did a little game with my son the other day, and then it made an apple appear on the screen, and then you click on the apple, and then the apple goes to a different position, and you click on it, and that's the entire game, right? And he played it for like 3 hours, and all his brothers sat there whining because they weren't getting a chance to play it, and I'm like, you are literally clicking on an image that then relocates to another part of the screen that you then go click on, right? But he did it, and it was, this is the best. It's awesome. It's such a good feeling, right? Or you get someone at work, right? Our intern, I just approved one of his first PRs at work. Like, he committed to production, right? And like, he's probably not going to do any work for the rest of the day because he's just going around high-fiving everyone in the office. Great, it's cool, right? But then, inevitably, you're going to get one of these, right? What is going on? Some vague exception, whoopsie, some error happened, right? There's literally in Windows 95 in Japan edition, there was the most common error that popped up said, error, something happened, right? Which is great for troubleshooting. And then you had one button, which was okay. And I mean, that was it, right? Error, something happened. Something is going to happen, right? So that kid that's running around high-fiving everyone, right? You get an exception. What's going to happen? Programming is terrible. This is the worst thing ever. I'm never going to do this again. I don't understand this. And then the panic sets in. Because what we forget as experienced developers is that we've all mastered these books, right? And these are concepts that we're super familiar with and we love. This by far is the best one right here. An expert vague understanding. Just that juxtaposition makes me cackle every time, right? But trying stuff until it works. That's generally not a concept that is taught and appropriate for most things, right? You know, if you're a contractor and you're building a house and you're trying to put a wall up and the wall's not going up, and you're like, you know what? Let's just try putting a board here. What happens if I do that? Or changing stuff and seeing what happens. Well, we need a window here. Let's cut this board, and now we have a hole. Well, you know, that's a structural wall, and now you have a, you know, safety violation as your house is collapsing, right? Getting it to work and then forgetting how, right? What does it say? And having no idea how, right? These are things. No, they're not. No, no. I would love it if O'Reilly printed these, but O'Reilly does somewhat officially sanction these covers. There's some joke account that does them, but they're hilarious. Right. But these are things that we've incorporated as part of our practice. Remember that whole quote way back from the beginning from, I'm so bad with names, Sarah McKellar, maybe? You can go back in the slides, we'll find out, right? Where she said, we're used to changing the world. We see things and we change it, right? That's just fundamentally part of what we do as programmers. And so new mentoring people, they think, I've got to get it right. And if I don't have it right, oh no, right? So we throw an exception and we go, oh, whatever, right? Find out what the exception is, fix it, move on with life. These mental things, this attitude about it's okay to fail, it's good to try and fail, and then iterate and try and fail and try and fail, and that failure gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually you got what you want, right? And then you've learned, and you're better, and hopefully you only make this mistake, you know, a few dozen more times until eventually you master it, right? That mental idea of it's okay to keep doing this is a hard barrier for a lot of people to break when they're first starting to get into programming. You don't have to get it right on the first time, and because it is code, most of the time it's totally fine if you mess it up a couple times. Just don't commit it to production broken, right? Until then, you're pretty good. Now, this one here, right? So we look at the some vague exception. Oopsie, or something happened, right? That's the panic point. This slide, actually putting this slide together, codified like a whole bunch of thoughts and problems that have been like some of the most difficult challenges of being a mentor, particularly the people that are new to programming, right? And we look at it, and you go, oh, the big problem on that line, obviously, is that some error blew up, and it's really not, right? The thing that taught me the most is this right here. Right? What is that slash and those words after it and Python and a code? I forget that these are concepts. They're so ingrained in what I know and how to do that using a command line or just these little how to use a computer things, right? Because that's what I've done my whole life. Intuitive, this goes back to the language, right? But this is more like the physical language. Intuitive and understanding and easy for me to grasp. Completely foreign concepts to so many people out there, right? How do you even get to this directory? Have they ever heard of the command line? Have they seen the command line, right? Most of us use the command line with some degree of proficiency, right? Did you know you can type CD space and then a directory name and it like changes to a directory, right? As opposed to like a file explorer and you're clicking through it and whatnot. We know that, it's easy, right? I started using computers in the 80s. It was DOS. And that's all you had was the command line, right? Windows 3.1.1 is literally a DOS program that runs a GUI on top of the operating system. It's not an operating system, really. And so you use the command line. I've been doing that. See, 80s is 30 years ago, 20, 40, yeah, okay. So my whole life, this is my experience with computers. And we go in and we say, hey, just quickly go here and run this program. And that may mean absolutely nothing to them. And then you realize you have to teach them an entire thing called computer before you even get to the programming thing. So in it was either 95 or 96, we were asked, it was in high school, some of my nerd friends and I were asked to go to this nursing home. They were gonna get some computers and this new cool thing called email. And then they could talk with like their grandkids and other people using the email, and they didn't have to write letters and all that, and it was gonna be awesome. And we're like, yeah, we're gonna put together a curriculum, and we're gonna go in, and we're gonna teach them, all right, here's how you connect to AOL, then you can launch the Netscape Navigator and go in, and we're gonna type an email, and they're gonna practice sending emails, and it's gonna be awesome. And then we get there, and we're helping get everything arranged, and there's this sweet old lady who was sitting in the front row, and she leans over to her friend, and essentially says, oh, look, they got one of those power buttons, kind of like on the sewing machine, so this isn't going to be that bad after all, right? And she's talking about the mouse, because it was a little brick, right, and it had a little box on the top, right? So as teenagers, we never occurred to us that step one was going to be, this is a mouse. Let's practice moving the arrow around. This is a single click. This is a double click, right? So for 45 minutes, instead of writing emails, we learned how to move an arrow around on the screen and click on things, because it had never occurred to us that these people, this is, for a lot of them, some of them, this was the first time they'd ever touched a computer in their life, right? Fortunately, most people nowadays are used to touch interfaces and mouse and stuff, but the command line is just as foreign to most people nowadays as the mouse was to those people at that time. There's a whole pile of things that we don't think about, we actually have to teach, right? It's not just language, right? We think, oh, I'm teaching you a program, I gotta teach you the language, right? Design patterns, how do you think about programming? How do you put something together to solve a problem, right? More simple algorithms, right? We have intuitive ideas. Oh, I need to do this is a loop, right? I need to read input in, I'm gonna do this, or I need to do that. There's common ways and simple ways that we've developed to solving problems. And it's not just, I have to teach you a language or concept. There's all these other things, right? And it just stacks. And I think it's becoming harder. We're making it harder. There's cool programs, there's Apple Playgrounds, Google's got a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of stuff online for kids these days, Scratch and whatnot, to make programming accessible. But I fear that as programming becomes ubiquitous and more people want to get into it, are we raising the barrier to entry, right, for them? And in 1997, let's make a website, you fire up VI, remember our one-true editor, and boom, you got a website. And 10 years later, 2007, let's make a website. Now you have to download jQuery, fire up VI, boom, you got a website, right? I saw this blog post last year, and it cracked me up. 2017, let's make a website. Right, and this is a starter template, not even the finished website, right? Now, you can still do the 1987 way of firing a website, but this is commonly accepted development practices nowadays for making a simple website. Are we doing that in other realms of programming as well? Do we make it look like this? Is it the Xcode IDE, what everyone thinks developing is? So they don't even want to approach it because they go, in order to do something simple like a website, which technically really is simple, can be, for a very basic website. But if I have to do all this to get something to show up. Should I even start, right? And someone brand new, you take a 14-year-old and you're walking them through this, and 4 weeks later, you're like, and ta-da, now there's pixels on the screen. Are they going to stick with it that long? I don't know, right? It's a concern I have as I look at my kids and go, how can I make it accessible to them? I don't know. I don't have a great answer to that. I think communities help a lot, and I'm going to talk about that at the end. But what level of programming, do you need Webpack and all those other things for someone who's just learning? Just get a website up, right? This is a great article. I highly recommend looking it up and reading it. At what level do you teach people, right? Where is the abstraction and complexity level that you need for them right then? Do you understand them well enough to go, where can they be at right now, right? Right in the middle there where it says, it's like choosing a contractor because they know how to forge and cast steel using coal and iron and an oven and bellows. What they actually need to know is A, where's the nearest Home Depot, and B, what to do with the steel once they got it, right? My mom loves to bake and cook, and she has a huge collection of recipes on everything from napkins to 3x5 cards to whatever she scribbled it on. And she wanted to find stuff quickly. And for her, it's not too bad because you just pull out the filing box and you know it's roughly this far back, or it's the one with the chocolate stain on it, or whatever. So she can rifle through it and find stuff. And then what about those recipes that aren't so common, right? So let's make an index, and then mom can have a little recipe thing, right? Alice Weigert wrote a book called Automating the Boring Stuff, which is all about, hey, there's so many things in people's daily lives that take a bunch of time and repetition and hard that you can just write a little script and boom, you're done, right? You're a secretary in an office and like you're always making these calendar notes, and so you got to do mail merge, right? Well, you can script that rather than typing them in one at a time and all that. And the thing he brings up in his introduction is, I'm not going to teach you all these abstractions and encapsulations and all these other things because you just need a script that works, right? You just need to hack something out, and it can be ugly and it's terrible, and no real person, like professional, would commit this to production. But that's not the problem you're trying to solve, and that's not what you need right now. You just need some steel, and then you bolt it together, and boom, you got a structure that works. And that's good enough, right? And there's lots of opportunities nowadays. It's amazing the number of tools that are out there. MIT has opened a lot of their classes. Check.io, you play games, right? You have these levels, you try to solve these problems, and unlocks more levels. Coursera, Runestone Interactive, I highly recommend that one. There's a book called How to Think Like a Computer Scientist, which is now completely online, digital, interactive. You can type your code into the browser, Code Academy. It just goes on and on and on. So mentoring can change, fundamentally change people's lives. It changes yours as a mentor, right? You have to up your game because they're going to ask you questions you don't anticipate. So you got to be at a point where you can answer questions, and so you're always like, oh, I gotta learn more, right? It pushes you, right? And it is thrilling and exciting, and it changes people's lives, right? So right at the beginning, I said I have a degree in political science, not in computer whatevers, right? Which I wanted. I loved computers, and I was passionate about it. In high school, I did a lot of stuff with computers, and then I went to college, and the professors openly stated that their goal in the introductory computer science classes were to get rid of anyone that was not a true believer and passionate, right? Which, 20% of the students actually made it like CS 200 because it was a terrible experience, right? They stomped on your dreams and crushed your soul, like literally, right? And so I withdrew from school because I wanted to do computers, and I'm like, well, this is a terrible experience. I don't know what else I want to do. So I worked for a couple of years, moved to Japan for a couple of years, and it was a great experience. And I had all these other life things that were good, right? But it wasn't until 10 years after high school that I actually graduated from college and actually got on with my life or whatever, right? And I got a degree in political science because I was passionate about it and I was like, oh, I'll go into law. And then I got a job writing software. So that was fine, right? And then I learned how much I'm like, I love this, right? But that's a decade of my life where I look at my boss, right? He's, the VP of technical operations or whatever. He's 2 years older than me, right? He has 14 years of professional experience. I have 4. Where would I be at now if I'd had someone that I could have turned to and stepped in and said, you know what, I'm passionate about this. Can you help me get over this first step? Can you help me get into that, right? And that's why I think community is such an important thing, right? First tech conference I went to, they're all talking about community and this is so great and whatnot. I'm like, this is junk, right? My company's paying a ton of money. I flew halfway across the country. Give me the tech, right? I'm at a tech conference. Teach me tech, right? Now, 4 years later, I'm like, we should have a community, right? Where we get together. Because it is such an important thing, right? That support, you look around and you're like, you know what? I can turn to someone and they've got my back, right? I'm struggling. They're going to bolster me, right? You know what? I'm feeling really good about things. I can reach out and help someone else, right? I can make a change and a difference in their life. Can you be that person for, you know, the 14, 15, 16-year-old person that I was, super passionate about programming, right? In the mid-90s, wanted to do it, was doing everything I could to try to do it, and then there was nothing there for me, right? I didn't have anyone to turn to. I didn't know anyone to talk to. The only people I knew that were programmers were the most pretentious jerks I'd met in my life. And it really crushed my soul for a while, right? I'm super passionate about these user groups now because it gives a forum for new people to come in and meet people that can help them, that can be a support for them. Come to the Python user group, yay, it's my plug, right? Or JavaScript or whatever else, or come to these meetings. Mentoring is such a fundamental need these days. There's so many people that want to do this, that want to be programmers, that want to have that joy and excitement and fun that we have every day at work. And they may not know where to start or where to go, but we can be there for them. You can be that helping hand to lift them up. And so be aware of the people you're teaching, right? These are some concepts that I found to be real struggle points for me to overcome and be aware of, because I had never thought about it before. But I'm so glad that you guys came and are involved in developer communities. It's so gratifying to see the number of people that show up to these events. So, thank you for coming.
Awesome. Thank you, Caleb. Do we have any questions?
Can I substitute passion with stubbornness and not wanting to quit? Like, you know, the professor says, this is going to be really hard, and if you don't have passion, you're not going to make it. If I don't have passion, I just don't want to, you know, prove him wrong.
Yeah, well, that's a form of passion in and of itself, right? Like, the professor's like, I will crush your soul, and you're like, no, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong, right? Just in your face, right? They'll get you far enough, right? And you don't have to be like, oh, I can't believe I'd ever do anything but program, right? It is totally okay to be like, you know what? I just want to be a career programmer, right? I don't care if you don't have 4,000 projects on your GitHub and you're maintaining 14 open source projects in your spare time because you're programming 300 hours a week. Or there's 300 hours in the week. I don't know, right? But that's not, it's okay, right? I know plenty of people that I want to go to work. I'm going to work my 9 to 5 or whatever, and I'm going to write code, and it's going to be competent, it's going to be okay, and I'm going to go home, and I'm not going to touch a computer until I come back to work tomorrow or whatever. And that's totally good, right? I mean, they're good programmers, and they can be good mentors. Some of my best mentors at work have been those type of people. They're not, my heart swells with joy for programming, right? But then you also have people where we've been trying to hire recently, and you have these college grads, and they come in, you're like, what interests you in programming? They're like, I got a degree in it. You're like, where's my motivation to hire you, right? What makes me think that's gonna get you like wanting to come to work and do things, right? And that's the other problem. And again, where a real problem that I think these user groups solve is helping inspire passion. This is good. This is something I really want to do, and I'm gonna get into it. Instead of, well, you know, my career counselor suggested that my aptitude, so I'm a programmer, right? And it's like, well, you know, I think attitude helps a lot. Because you're gonna throw an exception, and it's gonna blow up, and things are gonna get hard, and you're gonna hit a point where you just cannot solve the problem, right? How do you get past that? Right? How do you personally keep going past that and continue on, right? I teach sword fighting for a number of years, and that's kind of the thing that makes or breaks the people that continue, because at some point, sword fighting stops being exciting because you're like waving something around, right? And at some point, it really becomes you're doing footwork, right? And you do this for hours because it's balance, and you got to get that. And if you don't get that down, you're never going to advance to like the cool stuff that you can do, right? And the people that don't want to do the drudgery, that don't want to get past that, are never going to make it to the point where they're doing the cool stuff. Fun little subtle things that make sword fighting so exciting, right? They see the glamour and then they die as soon as it becomes hard. That's also where the mentor happens, is because you can get them past that and encourage them and help them through the struggles.
Awesome.
Yeah. Stubbornness, stick with it.
Any more questions? All right, I got one. How can you find a mentor? And if you're in a place to mentor, how can you find people to mentor?
Good question. Finding a mentor, if you don't know where mentors are, go to user group and ask, right? Or you just do something, right? Like, does anyone know anyone that programs? Can I talk to them? Finding a mentor, I think, is harder if you're not already plugged into a group of people, right? If you are, just ask, right? Say, I would like someone that can help coach me, right? I want to learn JavaScript because technically I'm a full stack developer and my job title states that I know JavaScript, which I don't, right? Because I'm really a back-end engineer. But I went to the Hack Night a month or two ago and said, I need to learn JavaScript. And a person came up and was like, here's resources. Great, this is cool. Do I have questions? Can I contact you? And they're like, yes. And now, I barely know JavaScript, as opposed to don't at all know JavaScript, right? If you want to become a mentor, make it publicly known, I'm willing to mentor, right? Get out there, put little flyers up in the public library. Can I post this? If you're interested in learning programming, contact me right here. And most public libraries are like, sweet, yeah, go ahead, right? And then you accidentally become the technical assistant and you're running a class at the public library, right? Which is a thrilling and rewarding experience, right? Put yourself out there. Just be open and willing. Just let it be known. I am willing to do this, which I am, right? I'm just publicly acknowledging it, right? If you want a mentor, I'm not saying I'm good at it, or I'll actually help you very much. But if you want someone that you can then find out that I'm terrible at it, I'm totally willing. We can give it a try, right? And then half the kids at our church, right, have some programming experience because I said that once. And then they all came up and said, I'd like to learn some programming. And none of them have continued with it, but they tried it at least, right? And it was a fantastic experience for me. So yeah, just make it known and be open, right? And there's times in your life when you're like, you know what, I've got 4 kids, I just moved across the country, I have a house I'm trying to put together, and I'm trying not to lose my job because our company is struggling. I can't do it right now, right? And that was 3 months ago, but now everything's okay, right? So I'm back in the market.
Awesome. Any more questions? Awesome. Thank you, Caleb.